The quadratic formula.
The quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a.
For some examples, to start, we have x squared plus 4x plus 1. The x squared is your a term, the 4x is your b term, and then the number 1 is your c term. So you have x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So then you would plug it in, so you have negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4 times 1 all over 2 times 1. Then you bring it down to negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 minus 4 all over 2. Then you have negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 12 all over 2. So then you come over here and you break down the radical of 12. So 12 can be broken down into 4 and 3. The square root of 4 breaks that into 2. So you're left with 2 radical 3. So then you can change it to x equals negative 4 over 2 plus or minus 2 radical 3 over 2. And that can be all simplified to x equals negative 2 plus or minus radical 3. For a second example, we have x squared plus 6x minus 7. So you write out your formula, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. You can bring down the terms into it, so it's negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 7 all over 2 times 1. So then you have negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 plus 28 all over 2. You can simplify the radical into being negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 64 over 2. Since the square root of 64 is a perfect square, you can turn that into just 8. So you have negative 6 plus or minus 8 over 2. And because it's just regular terms and there's no radical, you solve it as you would solving any regular equation like 2 plus 2. So it comes to negative 6 plus 8 over 2 equals 2 over 2, which simplifies to 1. Or you can do negative 6 minus 8 all over 2, which is negative 14 over 2, or becomes negative 7. Some equations have imaginary numbers as solutions. An example is 3x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 0. You'd write out your formula, and then you plug in your numbers, so it's negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared minus 4 times 3 times 1, all over 2 times 3. Then you bring it down to negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 4 minus 12, all over 6. Then you bring it to negative 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 8 over 6. And since it's negative 8 in the radical, you have to break that down and make it a rational number. So you have a breakdown to the square root of 8 and the square root of negative 1. The square root of negative 1 turns to I, and the square root of 8 you break down further to 2 and 4. And then 4 breaks down into just 2, so you're left with 2i radical 2. So it's negative 2 plus or minus 2i radical 2 over 6. Or you can simplify that to negative 1/3 plus or minus I over 3 times the square root of 2. Or negative 1 plus or minus I rad 2 over 3.